Welcome to the Explainer. We usually think of human history as a series of choices made by leaders or brilliant innovators, right? But what if the ultimate decision maker wasn't human at all? Today, we're diving into how geography isn't just some passive backdrop. It is literally the active dictator of human destiny. So, the core concept we're unpacking today is geography as destiny. It's this undeniable reality that the Earth's physical landscape forces us to either adapt or, well, perish. It sets the absolute ground rules for where we can build, how we gather our food, and basically how we survive. We love to think we've totally conquered nature, but honestly, nature still calls the shots. Here is our itinerary for today. First, Australia coast versus core. Then, Oceania, the blue continent. Third, Antarctica, the living laboratory. And finally, the global climate loop. Section 1, Australia coast versus core. Let's start with Australia. It's the world's flattest and second driest continent, and that extreme geography creates a massive, massive split in where people actually live. I mean, over 80% of Australians live within just 50 miles of the coast. And why is that? Well, the Great Dividing Range provides this nice, temperate climate and fertile soil right along the edges. Meanwhile, the massive interior is left incredibly sparse. So, to survive in that massive, arid interior, the famous outback, humans have had to make some serious adaptations. You aren't going to find sprawling traditional cities out there. Instead, life is anchored to these really remote mining towns or absolutely massive cattle stations. The entire economy in the core is dictated by extracting resources. We're talking rich deposits of iron ore, gold, and opal, all pulled straight from the dry earth. And this builds a really complex relationship with the land itself. In the outback, ranchers rely heavily on the Great Artesian Basin. For a lot of them, it's literally their only reliable source of fresh water for livestock. And the mining? That requires highly specialized, massive infrastructure built in total isolation. But then, if you look at the coast, it's a completely different story. The Great Barrier Reef drives huge tourism economy, but that exact same geography demands really strict environmental regulations to protect it from human runoff. So it's this delicate, ongoing balancing act. Okay, so we've seen how humans handle a massive dry landmass. But what happens when the environment around you offers almost no land at all? Section 2, Oceania, the blue continent. Out here, human activity is utterly dictated by the sheer vastness of the Pacific Ocean and the exact geological makeup of your island. Think about it. If you live on a high island like Fiji, your land was formed by volcanoes. That means you get fertile soil, plenty of fresh water, and you can support a much larger population. But if you're on a low island, like the coral atolls of Kiribati, you're dealing with poor soil and barely any fresh water. Your survival is heavily, heavily tied to fishing and maritime trade. Living in Oceania also brings up the sheer logistical nightmare of connectivity. The distances between islands are staggering. That makes transporting everyday goods incredibly expensive, creating this huge dependence on air and sea travel, and driving the rise of regional hubs just to survive. Now, on one hand, this beautiful isolated geography attracts global tourism, which is an absolute economic lifeline, but it creates a real friction point. Locals constantly have to balance that influx of tourists with preserving their deep-rooted indigenous cultures and land rights. But the most urgent reality facing Oceania right now is extreme vulnerability. The very ocean that sustains these populations is turning into their biggest threat. Rising sea levels are directly threatening the physical existence of those low-lying atolls we just talked about. It's reshaping everything and forcing a truly heartbreaking reality: climate migration. People are being forced to leave their ancestral homes simply because the land can literally no longer hold back the sea. So we've seen how we adapt to drought and how we adapt to extreme isolation. But what happens when geography pushes human endurance to its absolute limit, when the environment just stops compromising entirely? To find out, we have to travel to the very bottom of the Earth. Section 3, Antarctica, the living laboratory. Antarctica stands alone as the only continent with absolutely zero permanent human residence. And the reason why comes down to one number: 98%. That is the amount of the continent completely covered by ice. It's a place where geography doesn't just impact your daily life, it strictly forbids traditional human survival. Things like construction and agriculture, they're simply impossible here. Because these constraints are so intense, I mean, it is literally the coldest, driest, and windiest place on Earth. Human activity is limited entirely to seasonal scientific research. But what's really amazing is how humanity actually responded to this. Through the Antarctic Treaty System, international law basically turned the entire continent into a protected living laboratory. It totally bans military activity, prohibits any mineral mining, and mandates total global cooperation to study things like climate change and astronomy. Section 4, the global climate loop. Okay, let's pull all of this together because a crucial takeaway here is that none of these geographical zones exist in a bubble. They form a terrifying closed loop system. Look at how this cascades. Step 1, human activity in industrialized areas heavily impacts the global climate. Step 2, that climatic shift causes Antarctica's fragile ice sheets to melt. And Step 3, that melting ice causes global sea levels to rise, which directly floods and destroys those highly vulnerable low islands in Oceania. So human activity in one zone is physically reshaping another. To quickly recap our journey today, we can clearly see how the physical environment commands human behavior across three incredibly different extremes. In Australia, the arid interior versus the fertile coasts dictates exactly where cities grow and where mining thrives. In Oceania, the vast ocean and specific island types create a life built around seafaring, while exposing whole populations to sea level rise. And down in Antarctica, the extreme cold and ice dedicate an entire landmass solely to science, with zero permanent settlement. In every single region, geography sets the rules. I'll leave you with this final thought. We have spent this explainer seeing exactly how humans bend and adapt to the will of the Earth. But as our climate shifts, those rules are changing faster than ever before. As the ice melts and the seas rise, will geography continue to just shape our lives, or will it eventually erase some of them entirely? It's a vital question for a highly uncertain future. Thank you so much for joining me. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.